Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and welcome to another Keep Dreaming episode. As you can see, I've got a couple of packages here. This is amusing. These are both the same thing. As it turns out, both people responsible for this game decided to send it to me on their own. What I have here is a brand new Sega Dreamcast game. For those who don't know, the Sega Dreamcast, my favorite game console of all time, still gets new games every once in a while. They're not licensed by Sega or have really anything to do with them in any way, shape, or form. They're by independent developers and publishers. Now, I've talked about this stuff a lot in the past, but in case you've never caught up on any of it, the long and the short of it is really that the Dreamcast has been getting new games really since it ended. In fact, I think there was only one year, I think it was 2011 or maybe 2010, where there was no games produced at all for the Sega Dreamcast. But every other year other than that, since 1998, there's been at least one game. And this year we're already off to a start. The birthday of the Dreamcast just happened, so if we're talking calendar years, then this is, you know, right after the birthday, we've already got a whole new game. This one comes from a company called JoshProd, or a publisher called JoshProd. The guy who runs it is not actually named Josh, but I'm not sure he would want me to say his name, so I won't. He actually sent me a copy of it right here, and they're mostly distributed by Videogames New York, who sent me a copy right here. Now, Videogames New York is a great store in Manhattan. If you've never been there, check it out if you ever have that possibility. I've been there a couple times. The inventory in there is just something to look at. It's really very, very interesting to see. But yeah, so a whole lot of games have come out since then, always by different companies and different passions. You know, sometimes a developer will have this idea where they really want to bring a game to the Sega Dreamcast for one reason or another, and that's usually how it started back in the day. Then now it's gotten to a point where a lot of developers and publishers, what they'll do, I know to some people this is comical, but I've explained this in greater detail in other videos. Some of them will say, you know, I have this game and I want to put it I want to put it out on every platform under the sun. Generally, of course, that would include things like PC and whatever's relevant at the time. But a lot of developers will put stuff on the Dreamcast if it's, you know, technically capable of appearing there for multiple different reasons. But one of which is simply that it's, you know, a console that's readily available to a lot of people. It's press discs, you know, and it can be done, you know, independently through factories using the mill CD exploit. And you don't need Sega's permission. You know, like there's a whole host of different reasons you can release a game on the Dreamcast and no one really cares. But what's cool about that is that they care enough that you get publication out of it. You get idiots like me making videos about it. You get just random news. So that's why a lot of games have been coming to the Dreamcast over the past few years. JoshProd, the dude who is responsible for this particular game, is unique. And I've said this in the past as well. The reason he's unique is, unlike those other two examples where you either have a passionate developer who wants the game there or you have a developer who's just kind of throwing it there, JoshProd is not a developer. He's more of a publisher, and what he'll end up doing is he'll go around and he'll acquire games he likes for one reason or another and bring them to the Sega Dreamcast. He's already given us some strange and great examples, and this is the latest one. So let's go ahead and open it. Like I said, both of these are the exact same game. It was just kind of a miscommunication. I ended up with getting the same game from two different sources, but open it up. What we have here is a game called Battle Crust. This one was the one shipped by JoshProd, and let's go ahead and take a look at the one from Videogames New York, even though it's going to be the same thing. Check it out. The days of the scissors are over. I now have a box cutter. Thank you to Kyle Vaughn, who couldn't take it anymore, and he just shipped me one, so that was nice of him to do. Now, the maiden voyage of this thing, let's take a look here. Let's make sure I get this open efficiently. Wow, you guys, I wish somebody had mentioned a box cutter over the years. Turns out these things are actually very helpful and efficient. Never knew, never knew. So inside of his, there's a couple of other things. There's a couple of ads for Videogames New York. There's a business card there. And of course, there is the game itself, which is still the same game. In both cases, this is the North American, well, the Japanese style, but if it's like previous JoshProd releases, there's going to be something to this. So yeah, I have two copies of the game, which was not intentional. I'll leave one sealed. Maybe I'll do a giveaway or something at some point. I don't know. But for now, we'll just focus on one particular copy. If you're interested in this game, again, you can get it at Videogames New York. I'll put a link in the description. You can also get it, I believe, at Play Asia. I'll put links in the description. There's also a PAL version of this that comes in a more traditional PAL set. But let's open up the game and talk a little bit about it. Now, I actually messaged the guy who runs JoshProd and asked him, like, what's the deal with this game? Like, what's the history of it? How did it end up on the Dreamcast? All that stuff. Because some of the time, it's very fascinating, like some of the stories. This one's not the most exciting story, but still what happened was amusing in of its own right. Basically, this is a game that actually came out on PC, I think it was in 2016, it was only like 2 years ago. He played it and he thought, this game's pretty good, I want to bring this to the Dreamcast. At first they thought it wasn't going to be possible from a purely technical standpoint, but he got a hold of the developers and they made a deal and they made this happen and they actually brought it over. And they actually did some enhancements for the Dreamcast version. Notably, he made this very clear to me, the PC version at least originally did not support what's known as Tate mode, or at least that's what he refers to it as. This game, I should have mentioned at the top of all this, is a shoot 'em up, which is, you know, you got a little ship and you're shooting at other ships as they come along. Now, the game is a vertical style shoot 'em up, so you're shooting at things coming down. And he said that when that's the case, he prefers that it has Tate mode, which what he says is basically when you just take the screen and, you know, make it go vertical like that. Some shoot 'em ups support that, some don't. Originally, Crust did not. The Dreamcast version does, thanks to his efforts. I'm assuming that was retroactively updated into the PC version, but I don't know that. But yeah, what you have is a shoot 'em up. Now, it's funny actually that it's a shoot 'em up because if you follow the Dreamcast scene at all, there was a time, man, when shoot 'em ups was really what just dominated the Dreamcast scene. Like, it was almost a joke. Like, every single game that came out, oh, it's another shoot 'em up. It must be, because that's mostly what we got. Then I believe it was Ghostblade was the last one, and after that it was done. And that was a few years ago. I think that was like 3 years ago. I want to say Ghostblade came out in 2015. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's been at least 3 years. And now we got Crust, so we have a new one in a genre that we used to have so much of, but then completely dried up because people were afraid to do it. So kudos to JoshProd for actually being like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm bringing the shoot 'em ups back. Now, taking a look at it, the game itself, you can see the cover there. This is, of course, the Japanese art style. This is what I suspected, but it's true. It comes with a dual manual, so basically you have both the Japanese and American style manual in there. I typically prefer the North American style, but of course that's because I'm an American and grew up on that particular style. Inside, it has some ads for other games he's released, like Ganryu, which, as I mentioned, it was an SNK. Well, it wasn't SNK, but it was on Neo Geo hardware by a company called Visco. And again, JoshProd, being the guy he is, he approached that company and then legitimately brought it over to the Dreamcast. Or 4x4 Jam, which I would say is the most technically impressive game of all the indie games on the Dreamcast, was a PSP mini game. And he found a way, he's like, I like this game, let's bring it to the Dreamcast. Like, the dude's doing things that nobody else is doing. It's very impressive. Yeah, so then it has just, you know, information about the story, the controls. The story is, it's AD 2010, which would have been 8 years ago. The universe government was under the domination of the Earth government. However, scientists of the universe government succeeded in the development of the high-strength materials metal crust. Metal crust was immediately used by machine forces of the universe government. Mechanical forces using the metal crust have invaded the Earth. A huge destruction machine was dropped to the ground. I don't know what the fuck any of that means, but it sounds awesome. It's a shoot 'em up. It doesn't really need a great story. I mean, when the whole story can be put into basically 2 paragraphs. So controls, you know, it's going to be very basic, I'm sure. I'll be showing you gameplay and all that stuff. Has credits, and then it's got, you know, just more pictures, and then it's got a full Japanese translation on there in case you want to play it in Japanese. The disc, of course, very nice artwork on the disc, and very nice artwork on the back, like that. It's got dual languages on the side, or well, no, in this case it actually just says Crust. Sometimes it says it in Japanese and English. In this case, it's just English. Very cool. So you can get this at Videogames New York. I'll put a link in the description, or Play Asia, as I mentioned before. I'm going to leave it with the American style. I feel like that's just the way I want to do it. But some other questions people might be concerned about. The disc. Sometimes people ask about, you know, which Dreamcast can play it and all that stuff. The games are always region free, so it doesn't matter if you have a Japanese, European, or American Dreamcast, it'll read it. The only catch to this is, and I've for years have been giving slightly misinformation on this, only because only very recently was I corrected on it. So there's 3 versions of the Dreamcast when you look at the bottom of your console. You'll either have a revision 0, or revision 1, or revision 2. Now, a revision 1 is by far the most common. If you have that, you're fine. If you have a revision 0, you're fine. If you have a revision 2, there's a good chance you're still fine. The thing with the revision 2 is it's common misconception that revision 2s can't play mil-CD or burned games or anything like that. They can't read non-official games. That's not true. What happened is at the very end of the revision 2, like the last month of production, Sega finally stripped out the mil-CD exploit code or ability to read mil-CD. That last batch of the revision 2s can't do it. I have one of those thanks to a guy named Tom, where I got more information about all this. Very fascinating. So what I'm telling you is 95% probability you're going to be fine. Just look at the bottom of your Dreamcast. It says, I'm sure if you're watching this video, you probably already know if your Dreamcast can read mil-CD games or not. For those who don't know, I did a whole video on mil-CD. Long story short, it's an exploit in the Dreamcast that was designed to read data, but people realized they could program entire games through it. It wasn't meant to do that, but it can. So there you go. That's how you get these type of things.
All right, and we're up and rolling here. As you can see, there's the JoshProd logo and Rush On Game, which I believe is part of the whole JoshProd thing. Anyway, to be honest, I'm not totally sure. But anyway, so here's the intro of the game. As you can see, there's the story mode that was written out that I read. Feel free to go back and take a look at that if you are interested. So I just want to say a few different things, a couple of notes before you go ahead and get into the gameplay, and then you guys can just enjoy that. So first things first, in case anyone's curious, I didn't mention this. The game supports VGA mode, which is actually how it's running currently. What you're seeing is the game running through the Dreamcast's higher resolution modes at 480p. Outputting through the Gecko, which is an HDMI box. I've done a video on it. Captured straight through the Hauppauge HD PVR2. So you're just seeing pretty much as straight of a possible capture as you can. And I think it looks very, very clean. But then again, I know a lot of people will point this out because this happens all the time. Gameplay. It looks simplistic. It looks kind of like a Sega Genesis game, Adam. What's up with that? How come all these indie Dreamcast games always look like this? The simple truth is budget. Things like 4x4 Jam are the exception, not the rule. The truth is with the indie Dreamcast games, there's just no money. You know, they're very low budget. They're lucky to even come out for the most part. So it has nothing to do with the Dreamcast's technical prowess. Obviously, it's capable of producing games that are bigger than this. It really just comes down to the amount of money involved, because big games cost infinitely more money than indie devs would ever get back by putting them on the Dreamcast. So maybe the times will change. We're starting to get there. Again, things like 4x4 Jam are proving that it is possible to at least get those games brought over. As time goes on and it's just cheaper and easier to make, you know, more traditional Dreamcast looking type of games for, you know, say PC and other independent development, it's entirely possible you'll get more of those. But for now, that's just not the case, and I hope the Dreamcast lasts long enough, you know, to see that kind of thing happen. To be honest, I never thought it would last as long as it did. If you told me back when it was first debunked, you know, back in like 2001, 2002, saying, you know, telling me, hey, do you know you're going to be doing a video in 2018, you know, about a brand new Dreamcast game, and this is going to be a kind of a regular thing, I would never believe that. But here we are. So, as I always tell people, like, you know, vote with your wallet. If you like the idea of more Dreamcast content, support it. Support what comes out. And so I hope you go ahead and check this out if it's at all interesting to you. There is also a limited edition of this game. I think it's strictly limited to Europe, and it's a 2-disc set. It has the game and a music CD. I don't have that, obviously, but that's an option if you enjoy the music. So with that said, I'm going to, at this point, kind of check out here. I'll tune in at the very end of the video just to, you know, say goodbye. But yeah, go ahead and enjoy the game, enjoy the music, and have a good time, everybody. Hey guys, I'm back, and we're coming up to the big boss fight at the end. Before we get to that, I just kind of want to say a couple of last things. First, thank you very much for watching the video. If you've enjoyed this game, or if you're at all interested in it, again, I'll have links in the description. You can check out Videogames New York or Play Asia to pick up some copies. Again, there is a limited edition, but only in Europe, and they have different places where you can get that. But if you want, you can look into that. So I want to thank both JoshProd for everything he did in getting this game made, and of course sending me a copy. Thank you to Video Games New York. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all later.